I've interviewed over several hundred business owners and done multiple transactions with business owners. And the one key blind spot that I find with business owners is they don't spend enough time thinking about after the transaction. And so that's why I wrote the book.
Today's guest is Jamie Waldren, founder of JN Private Wealth and the author of Exit on Your Own Terms. We're in the middle of a massive wave of consolidation in the MSP and cybersecurity space. PE rolling up platforms, strategics getting aggressive, and founders asking, what's my business really worth and when should I exit? Jamie spent 30 plus years helping owners navigate that exact question. But here's the twist. Most founders are prepared for the deal, not what comes after. Today, we're diving into succession planning, what actually makes an MSP attractive to buyers, and how to align your business, your wealth, and your life before you go to market. Listen in. But first, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. My name is Madhur Dugar. I am a senior M&A advisor at Exendio Advisors, focused around MSPs and IT services. And this is my podcast series, M&A Insights. If you are interested in finding out more about how we are helping MSPs exit or grow inorganically, write to me at madhur@exendio.com, connect with me over LinkedIn, or visit our website, www.exendio.com. Let's get started. Jamie, welcome to my podcast. I'm very, very excited to have you over here. You know, the first time we met was at the IT Nation Grow Conference. I heard you on a panel talking about the emotional aspects of transitioning after you exit. And I just felt like that's a topic that's so important, doesn't get discussed enough, doesn't get appreciated enough. And I didn't have it covered in my podcast. So, we got to talking, and I'm glad that you're over here doing this recording with me.
Welcome to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. And, for listeners, I also just want to share with you that Jamie has a great book called Exit on Your Own Terms that covers a lot of great topics that have to do with exiting. And one of the topics that we'll be talking about today is actually coming up with a succession plan, what it even means, and how do you go about getting one. So with that, and without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Jamie, just provide us with a little bit of background on you and on your book.
Okay, yeah, so for over 30 years, I've helped founders think about one of the biggest transitions of their life, and that's moving from building a business to eventually stepping away from that business. And what I have found over time is that the most exiting planning focuses heavily on the transaction of the business, valuation, deal structure, taxes, but not enough on the founder's personal life and what comes next. And so that's why I wrote the book, to help educate people on what's coming, because I've interviewed over several hundred business owners and done multiple transactions with business owners. And the one key blind spot that I find with business owners is they don't spend enough time thinking about after the transaction. And so that's why I wrote the book.
In chapter 1 of your book, you talk about succession planning. All right. And the first question I have is, most MSPs will ask, well, what is even a succession plan? Can you tell us to share some broad frameworks around that?
A succession plan is really a roadmap. It's determining where you are now and where you want to go. I think of it a lot like if you're taking a vacation and you're getting in your car and you're going to drive across the country, you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of how you're going to get there and what direction you want to go into.
And do you think people think about a succession plan in that way?
I think a lot of people do, but they don't think clear enough about what's involved in it, because there's many things involved in it. There's three key things that I think about a roadmap. One is the business part of it. What is the business, the transition of the business? What does the ownership transition look like? And then what does the founder's ownership look like? So those three things, they're different, they're intertwined, but a lot of owners think more about the business. They don't think about the ownership structure, how things should be set up, taxes and other things. And the final one is they don't put enough thought into the, after the exit, what the founder transition is going to look like.
What really holds people back from putting together a succession plan?
Right. I think it's a matter of complexity and, not being clear on the emotional side of what they want to do. A lot of people think, oh, it's too complicated. I'll just get to it later. I'm so focused on the business, and they don't really break it down into those three areas that I talked about. So it's really more about clarity and emotions, dealing with those three things, and then that gets people moving in the right direction when they understand that they really need to look at the business in three separate ways.
Yeah, I'll share something here as well, not to steal your thunder, but very often in my experience, they start to think about exiting when a buyer has actually approached them with an offer,
Right.
and that's literally the first time that they've really thought about this seriously. So in some sense, this has just arrived at their doorstep and they have not had the time to realize that they need to put together a succession. What is a first practical step a business owner should take if they're starting from zero on succession planning?
Yeah, I think it's just having a plan, having an idea of what you want to do in retirement, what kind of income that you need to replace, from the sale of the business, and you can back into that to what you need to get for the business, how much taxes you're going to have to pay. But I think the first practical step is just knowing what you want to do after you leave the business and being able to separate yourself from working in the business as to working outside of the business and not having any regrets once you set it up. So once you do that, then you can work back with that. And also, I think having good financial advisor to work with, having a good attorney, having good people around you, because it does take a good team to make a successful transaction. It's hard for one person to do everything, but I think having a good team put in place and knowing everybody is going to be working together collaboratively, but everybody kind of does their own thing, and then I think that's the best outcome.
Got it. How long does something like this take to put together? Like, what are some things that take longer than you may expect?
Yeah, I think ideally you're probably looking at least 1 to 3 year runway to start thinking about this. Some people will have a 5-year plan. They want to exit the business in 5 years, and they start looking at the business. They start looking at the transaction, what that's going to look like, their partnerships, their entities, how everything's set up. So I would say probably 1 to 3 years, but it can even go maybe 3 to 5 years for some people to kind of get themselves ready. So once they get closer to it, it's just a matter of putting everything in place.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, the 3 to 5 year window is a very natural one, especially given this whole C Corp conversation. But even away from that, I feel, even the folks who were not even thinking about C Corps, when you reached out to them and asked them, like, what would you like to do or when would you like to exit? 3 to 5 years was kind of one of the most common responses we got.
Right. And it doesn't mean you can't, look at an offer if it comes in between time, but at least if you're planning for that, you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff in stages and you're going to be able to kind of get everything set up. So when the offer comes in, you're going to be ready and you'll know if it's the right offer and you'll be there to maximize the business.
I totally agree. I also think that the kind of succession plan you want is going to influence the kinds of offers you're willing to entertain. Like, not every offer is going to be conducive to the kind of exit that you want to take. Maybe you want your kid to stick around in your business after you've exited. That's a different kind of a buyer, right? Maybe you want to just walk away from it. That's a different kind of a buyer.
Right. And that goes back to part of the succession plan. Many times I find the owner is still very involved in the business. All the key clients are still kind of coming through the owner. And that's really not a good succession plan.
What are some of the core components of a solid succession plan that every business owner should think through in terms of like leadership, ownership transfer, value creation, those aspects?
Yeah, so I think in the business side, they want to think about valuation. What is the valuation of the business? Obviously, get a valuation done. What are some of the key components that can drive that valuation going forward, assuming that they have a little bit of a runway? And the ownership is, how is the ownership set up? Are there partnerships? What sort of structure do you have set up? Are you thinking about taxes? Is there anything you can do now to help mitigate taxes during this transaction? And that falls under the ownership part of it. And then on the founder part of it is just identifying your identity, what you want to be after you leave the business. Identifying, are you going to travel? Are you going to still be involved in the business? Is there going to be an earn-out period of time that you'll have to deal with those sorts of things? Or really what you want to do with your life. And then you start thinking about your legacy too. How do you want to set up your legacy? Do you want to get some trust set up? Do you want to, take care of your family? Do you want to do some philanthropic work?
As an M&A advisor, one of the things I do is I offer a free calculation of value
Mhm.
to prospective clients. And I almost prefer it if they're like 1 or 2 years away from an exit, because that's when I can do a valuation and give them advice on here's what you need to improve about your business if you want your valuation to go from a X multiple to a X plus 2 or an X plus 3 multiple, as opposed to doing the valuation right at the very end, when, well, it is what it is now and there's not enough time to make the
Right.
adjustment.
After you get the offer or the LOI, it's a little bit late to start.
It's a little bit late, exactly. So, find these really great advisors, be it an M&A advisor or an exit planning person or a tax advisor. Get them involved in early. They can give you the right advice that you need to then create the roadmap for the succession plan. Is, I think, an important takeaway. For most MSPs, the vast majority of MSPs, I would say almost like 98% of MSPs have revenues that are below $10 million. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody.
Mhm.
For MSP owners who are sub $10 million businesses, what makes succession planning uniquely challenging compared to larger companies?
I think a lot of people overlook is an ESOP, selling to the employee, employee stock ownership plan. Particularly, if you have a $10 million, that's a nice sized business to do an ESOP. Particularly if you have loyal employees and you want to keep them involved in the business and you want to reward them, and you can do that in stages. You don't have to do it all at one time. So that's an area that I find interesting for that $10 million opportunity, is to sell the employees to an ESOP transaction, and there are tax advantages that we could get into later about that. But that's certainly one thing that I think a lot of sub $10 million business owners probably overlook, because not that many advisors know much about ESOPs, but it is a potential opportunity for certain types of business owners, particularly when they want to congratulate the employees and give some of the business to the employees in a very tax advantage way.
What's a scenario or an example or a real situation where things can go horribly wrong because there wasn't a plan?
I think the biggest thing is not being ready, and having some sort of catastrophic event, an illness, a death of one of the owners, a loss of a key employee, a loss of a key client, having too much concentration in one client. If you lose that client, we saw a lot of government contractors here recently who, during the Doge regime, they lost 1 or 2 clients, and there were 40-50% of their business, and their valuations really went down. So there's a lot of risk, but I think just not having a plan, not having the right advisors around, and having the owner too involved in the business itself, and not thinking about after exiting the business what life is going to look like, because it can be a very emotional time for a business owner that's put their life into building a business, and having a difficult time being able to step away from it and letting go and letting the employees take on the business and run it after that.
Yeah, agreed there as well. So I think the EPA put out some statistics on this, but something like 50% of businesses exit for unforeseen reasons, death and disability and disagreement or separation amongst the spouses, or the reasons that you never think about but are so serious that they force you to just take a decision. And if you're not prepared ahead of time, you're probably going to make a suboptimal decision. The other thing also that's true is the vast majority of MSPs are currently owned by people who are in their 50s. And these are the kinds of things that unfortunately come up more and more often as health begins to plateau out. If a founder is listening today to everything we're talking about and wants to take just one step after this episode, right, around succession planning, what should it be?
I think really just starting to think about what you want to do with the business. Where do you see the business going? Who do you think would be the best new owners for the business? Would it be the employees? Would it be selling to private equity? Would it be selling to strategic? Not that you have to have the answer, but I think by talking to a good advisor like yourself, Madar, and talking about options, what are the options for that business owner? And then having a personal plan, a personal identity, what you want to do after you let go of the business, and also having a business plan with an ownership structure that's the most tax efficient way to let go of that business and sell it to the new owners is probably the biggest thing that most people have trouble getting their hands around.
Yeah. I'll add my kind of 2 cents to this question as well. I think a good practical thing for someone to do is to go to a good MSP focused conference like the IT Nation Grow conference, for example. Listen to people talking over there. Find someone whose energy you like, who is well accepted and respected in the marketplace in their area. Have a conversation, start it. They should have a community of people that they can hook you up to in terms of all these various sleeves of conversations that you need to start having. And that might be a good way to also like leg into this discovery, right?
No, the peer groups and the CEO groups, like-minded people, because you share their ideas. Nobody has a monopoly on all the good ideas.
Agreed.
And learn from other people's mistakes. We've all made mistakes in our career. You learn from them and you move on. But by talking to other people that are either in that situation or thinking about it, or maybe people who have gone through it, which IT Nation certainly has a bunch of people that have gone through the transactions, is get best practices, find out what you should be doing, but more importantly, find out what you want to avoid and try and avoid those blind spots. And that's what I talk about in the book.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that. Jamie, thank you so much for this quick podcast on succession planning. It's such an important topic. I hope to do a few more of these with you going forward as well, and a bunch of other topics you cover in the book, but I appreciate your time today.
Okay, Madar, thank you very much, and I enjoyed it very much. We'll talk to you later.
Will do.
All right.